It is India versus China as Sri Lanka is going through one of the worst political crises in recent history. Welcome back. This is the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Shrinate and we're putting the spotlight on Sri Lanka, our coastal neighbours, the situation that's brewing there, and why is it important for India to take a concerted effort to intervene or not to intervene. China, remember, has already fired the salvo, becoming the first nation to endorse Mahindra Rajapakse's backdoor entry to power. India has reacted rather cautiously up until now, only stating that it is watching the developments in Sri Lanka. But the fact remains that Rajapakse's ascent to the crown is a diplomatic coup of sorts for Beijing, which has been cozying up to our neighbours. Although Speaker Karu Jayasuriya has clarified that Ranil Wickramasinghe continues to be the country's Prime Minister, that is hardly any reason for celebration as far as New Delhi is concerned. Questions also remain now being raised on the Prime Minister's diplomatic policy towards our neighbours, as India loses its diplomatic edge with almost every neighbour around us. The coup in Sri Lanka and its political ramifications for India and why it's important to discuss this is a big topic of debate on the India Development Debate this evening. I'm Supriya Shrinate and joining us is a stellar panel of experts with the sharpest views on Sri Lanka and the political crisis that's brewing there. Suhasini Haidar, diplomatic editor of The Hindu, M.K. Bhadrakumar, former ambassador, of course retired Colonel Mr. Hariharan, and of course military intelligence specialist as well, South Asia, and Professor V. Suryanarayan, former director, Center for South and Southeast Asian Studies, University of Madras. Professor Suryanarayan, if I may begin talking to you about the crisis in Sri Lanka. I will put the spotlight on India in just a bit, but what do you make of the crisis in Sri Lanka? Is this ouster of Wickramasinghe constitutionally tenable? Because everything else is going to pick on from there.
What is happening in Sri Lanka will not only affect the political system there, but it will have its implications for its immediate neighbours and also for its foreign policy. What happened on October 26th was an illustration of President of Sri Lanka misusing his powers and appointing Mahindra Rajapakse, who obviously did not have the support of the parliament. As far as India is concerned, it is in Indian interest that we should have friendly governments in our neighboring countries. What has happened in Sri Lanka is that a person who is well known not to have been sensitive to Indian interest has been sworn in as the president. And it had been a major victory for China because, according to sources in Colombo, Mahindra Rajapakse was discussing with the Chinese officials every move that he and Sirisena together were taking. Sun Tzu, the well-known Chinese strategic specialist who lived centuries ago, once said, "You must win a battle without waging a war."
Right.
And what China has accomplished
Professor Suryanarayan, if I may please come in.
It has been able to win a friend.
If I may just come in for a minute, and I will go across to Suhasini. I think your opening remarks are extremely crucial. They are pertinent and to the point. But Suhasini, does the political crisis in Sri Lanka give India a cause to worry? The Ministry of External Affairs reacted to the situation saying India is closely following the recent political developments in Sri Lanka. We hope that democratic values and the constitutional process will be respected. Is that going to be enough? Because it's more than 3 decades since our disastrous policy of sending the IPKF. We did play a crucial role in terminating the LTT in the last few years, but given the precarious position, does India have reasons to worry? And I'm going to discuss specific reasons like China and the Tamil and all of that in just a bit, but is the reaction that democratic values should prevail going to be enough here?
I think it was the least that was expected from India. After all, every other country that has a stake in Sri Lanka had already issued some kind of statement. You saw the Chinese ambassador go and welcome former President Rajapakse now, who had been sworn in. We saw the US, EU, United Kingdom all issue statements of concern. Now, India being the large presence it is in the neighborhood and particularly in Sri Lanka could hardly remain silent. Even so, the statement was essentially an anodyne one, saying, you know, we are watching closely, we hope the constitution is followed, we hope democratic values persist. So I think India is playing a slightly safe place over here, trying to wait and see how the situation plays out inside Sri Lanka, because any other kind of public position, and I'm not counting in here what India might be doing behind the scenes, any public position from India will have a ripple effect inside, a public position from India will have a ripple effect inside Sri Lanka, and India is well aware of that.
Fair point indeed. But let me just take this across to Mr. Badrukumar. And sir, as a diplomat, what should India be doing today? It will be criticized if it welcomes the new Prime Minister, as China has done, publicly endorsed, or it is actually going to be chastised for interfering with domestic politics of another nation if it were to ask Mr. President Sirisena to convene Parliament, as the US seems to be demanding. What should India's stance be? I mean, Mr. Rasi is very right here in saying that this was the least expected of India to make this sort of a statement. It's a dominant player in this region. It could not have remained silent. But is remaining silent, spectator at this stage, all that's left for India to do?
You see, we all know that we have close and friendly relations with Sri Lanka. But at the same time, this has always been a problematic relationship. And maintaining an equilibrium, keeping stability, it's on course, this relationship has always been a very challenging thing for, in our diplomacy. Now, qualitatively, there has been a shift since this government came to power from 2014. You know, this kind of a schism in Sri Lankan politics is not something new. The UNP and SLFP have been bitter rivals right from the 50s. But we had a red line that our interest was on the political landscape, on the political panorama, was confined to the Sri Lankan Tamil issue. We never really opined on the Sinhala politics, because there are, I can explain to you later if you are interested, because there are strong undercurrents there, historical, cultural, great sensitivity for the Sinhala community. Therefore, we had a aloofness there with regard to the Sinhala politics. But in 2014, this changed. And in 2015, this actually took a very overt form. And therefore, now I think from after having learned that this is not the right way to go about it, I think we have a good opportunity for a course correction to fall back on the traditional track, which is to prioritize our core interests in Sri Lanka, and in terms of that, dealing with the Sinhala leadership that emerges out of this and will be in power, with which we anyway have to deal with.
To Colonel Hariharan, and Colonel Hariharan, the political instability in Sri Lanka is a cause for concern for India at several levels. Before I go across to the obvious cause of concern, which is China, does New Delhi have more reasons to worry about Colombo's approach to Lankan Tamils before we really begin breaking sweat over China like we usually do?
I think Rajapakse will not behave as he behaved earlier towards Tamils. His defeat was in the presidential poll was mainly due to ignoring the minority concerns. And actually, if you see the Tamil National Alliance, it has still not taken a strong position in support of either of the contenders. So, I don't, actually the Tamil equation with the Sinhalese is undergoing a change after the defeat of LTTE. There is a greater realization among Tamils. That is why they say the national question, when Prime Minister Modi came to power in 2014, immediately one delegation of TNA met him in Delhi, and Modi promised them that the Tamil concerns would be addressed democratically for them to solve the problem and Article 13, which created the, with limited autonomy, the provincial councils for predominantly for Tamils, would be fully implemented. These are the issues which are still pending. So India's test will come, I think, in 3 months, when the issue of UN Human Rights Council takes up the war crimes issue. The deadline has been given. At that time it will be tested. I think it is pragmatic. I won't say this government was too friendly, because it was divided. That is Sri Sena's government, alliance government, between themselves, and they were contradicting even on Tamil issue as well as India related issues. And Rajapakse also, I remember when I met him in 2006, he mentioned India is family, China is a friend. So this is the attitude will not change overtly. It is it will affect the trade issues more, I think. Because the China is heavily invested. You cannot wish away China.
Yes. Fair point. Just give me a minute, and I want to go into China headlong, and I'll take that question up with Suhasini. But a quick point of view from Professor Suryanarayan. And Professor Suryanarayan, one of the references made to was that Mr. Rajapaksa, who was president during the Sri Lanka's war against LTTE, has been accused of ethnic cleansing and war crimes and other such grave charges. With these charges still fresh, can India reach out to him? And how much of a factor is domestic politics going to play? Because the incumbent government is trying very hard to find a foothold in Tamil Nadu and its politics. And now with the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister essentially saying that Rajapaksa should be declared a war criminal, what sort of an engagement are we going to see? And how much of a role is this factor going to play?
In the victory that Mahindra had against the Tigers, which had by 2000 become one of the most ruthless terrorist organizations in the world, though India did not provide any military assistance, it made tremendous intelligence inputs which enabled Mahindra Rajapakse to destroy the sea tigers. Secondly, when the members of the European Union wanted to censure Mahindra Rajapakse for war crimes in the United Nations organization in Geneva, India mobilized support. Not merely that, the United Nations passed a resolution congratulating Mahindra Rajapakse for putting down one of the terrorist organizations. New Delhi did that because Mahindra Rajapakse assured New Delhi that he will go ahead and bring about ethnic reconciliation by implementing sincerely the 13th Amendment and devolution of powers. In fact, he said 13th Amendment plus, but in actual practice, he went back on this. In fact, in the first meeting that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had with Mahindra Rajapakse soon after the swearing in, according to media reports, Prime Minister Narendra Modi told Mahindra that he is going slow on devolution of powers and that is a matter of concern for New Delhi. In fact, in the elections which catapulted Maithripala Sirisena to power, New Delhi played behind the scenes role and brought together Ranil Wickramasinghe and Chandrika Kumaratunga, who were not even on talking terms. But Maithripala and Ranil Wickramasinghe division started, and it is in India's interest. May I complete?
Okay, just Just 1 second, sir. Just 1 second, sir. I want to take the discussion back to China because that is why this topic is relevant and important. And Suhasini, quick questions to you. Many in India see both the Sri Lanka President, Mr. Sirisena, and the newly appointed Prime Minister Rajapakse as pro-China leaders. Is that a paranoia or a real concern? And I have a follow-up on China directly after this with you.
You know, if it is a concern, it shouldn't be, because obviously most people see what President Rajapakse, when he was president, did as a sort of proof of how pro-China he was, because it was during his time that projects like Hambantota came up, or the Colombo port project came up. But if you see that the opposition to him that came together simply to defeat him, came to power in 2015, has done very little to change that course. In fact, if anything, they have become more indebted to China over the past few years. While when they say that they were taken into a debt trap by Mr. Rajapakse's government, what the Sirisena Wickramasinghe combined failed to explain is why they took more loans and why they didn't use the fresh loans they got from China in order to pay back some of the older loans, if the debt trapping was what they worried about. So I think one has to understand that you are dealt with these choices. Anyone who comes, unless they are able to get loans or alternative project funding at reasonable rates from someone else, like, you know, India or Japan or the US or someone else, if China is the only player in that game, then China is going to win that game. And I think it is only just sort of breastbeating to sit around in New Delhi saying, why is Sri Lanka doing this, or why is the Maldives doing that, or why is Bangladesh doing that, when actually no real alternatives are being given. And I think we do have to ask that question as Indians. If we expect all our neighbors to stop taking you know, investment opportunities from China, are we also prepared to do the same? Because I see that we, India itself, is hopeful of all kinds of infrastructure investment from China as well.
So, Suhasini, why I asked you that question was, and I hear you there, I hear you that it isn't that there are too many alternatives available for people as far as investment is concerned, but China will have more than a commercial presence given the amount of investment that has already gone in. And with Lanka needing investments even more to pump prime a slowing economy, China, one presumes, will look to exploit the situation. Is it at least fair to assume that in some sense India has lost round one to China?
No, not at all. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because if you keep wanting to run in a race in which only money counts and only infrastructure spending counts and only these kind of projects count, you will always feel that you have been defeated by China. But actually, India's stakes in its neighborhood stakes in India run far beyond a loan or a project. They run to the deep historical linkages we have, the deep commonalities we have when it comes to language, when it comes to culture, when it comes to food, when it comes to the fact that we send, that our neighbors send their children to India to study, that they send their the patients to India to be healed. I think, you know, as long as we don't look at what are India's real strengths, and our real strengths are being able to work along with our neighborhood in order to have low-cost solutions to problems that we all share, I think we will continue to fight in a race in which we are already handicapped. I know that a television show is too short to make this point, but I think we have to stop looking at us as a counterpoint to China when it comes simply to providing funding. Because all that we will do is we will put unnecessary pressure on our neighbors, and we will end up impoverishing ourselves and the whole region in the process. I think what we have to do is say, what is China doing? Okay. How can we bolster our neighbors so that they can more independently deal with what China is doing with them?
Okay, that sounds extremely sane, and that should be the approach. But very quickly, if I may go across the table and get quick last words from all of you. Let's begin with the diplomat here. And Mr. Bhadrakumar, while I agree with Suhasini that we can't be in this constant race with China to pump prime economies in our neighborhoods, because we've got our own issues. And unlike China, we don't have cash to burn. The reality also is that economic prowess or economic and defense influence also helps a country like China to exert political developments, to influence political to have larger political implications being influenced. Given that eventuality, should India be prepared?
You see, I completely, 100% I agree with what Suhasini has said. You know, I mean, I could have spoken not even as good as what she has done. But I can only add one point. That is that Sri Lankan nationalism has a very long history. And we are underestimating these leaders. They are so very obsessive, they are so very possessive about their national sovereignty. And we should learn to trust them. Whichever government comes to power, it is a democratically elected government. It has compulsions. It is accountable to the people. And we can't dictate that you should do like this, because they have political accountability there. As has been explained earlier, they have requirements of money for carrying forward their developmental program, for sustaining the growth rate, for delivering on the economic agenda. So they will go here, there, wherever it is possible. Can India do something? That is one way. But on the other hand, by taking money from China, I think it is simply paranoia that we think that Sri Lanka is going to lose its sovereignty. Having lived there, worked there for 4 years, I can tell you, nobody can make that kind of an ingress into that country's strategic autonomy. Probably amongst all our neighbors, they are the toughest of the lot at the negotiating table. Look at Shastri Sirimao Pact. From a position of utter weakness, will any country concede that kind of a thing as India conceded? They negotiated so brilliantly. So, that shows, that what is the temper of the people there. That's an important
point that you make, that they are tough negotiators on the high table. But Colonel Hariharan, a quick last word to you then. First Maldives, then Sri Lanka. And I agree with both Suhasini and Mr. Bhadrakumar here that let us not presume that monetary influence is going to influence the political outcomes of places. But whether it's Maldives, whether it's Sri Lanka, there seems to be a pattern as far as our own clout and maybe some depletion in that clout for India is concerned. How do we ensure that our clout remains intact? Because there are people who believe that foreign policy has been found wanting as far as our own clout is concerned.
No, I think we should be pragmatic. China's ambition is a global ambition. Ours is a regional ambition. China is heavily invested in South Asia. The biggest project investment is in Pakistan. So in Sri Lanka specifically, Chinese investment needs Indian trade to survive. Colombo Harbour, which is Colombo Carrier Terminal, is 80% customers are from India. So there is an existential requirement for China to make up with India in Sri Lanka. This we should leverage with Sri Lanka. Actually, Ranil Wickramasinghe has spoken about it when he spoke at an International Indian Ocean Forum. This aspect, I think we should fully exploit. The Chinese dynamics are on a different plane. Our dynamics are in a different plane. So we cannot simply stop China by only loud mouthing, but take pragmatic measures how to leverage China's interest to our national interest. I think in this respect, I think we are not able to translate our promises to our neighbors into real-time action. This China does every time. I think this is the first cue. Look at the bridge they have built in Maldives at $1 billion they're investing. Maldives is totally dependent upon India. It is not going to, I remember one of the Sri Lankan politicians telling me, India is here, China is 2,000 miles away. China is trying to compensate that distance by making its presence strong in Indian Ocean. I think we should tackle this holistically, trade related, economy related, politics related, and strategic equation we should build. Unless we do that every time,
all right,
like in Nepal.
All right.
You see, the same thing happens.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir, I'll have to cut you short there. I've completely run out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate. I'm sorry, I'll have to cut you short there. But thank you very much for this incisive discussion, the points that have been put on the table. I thank each one of you for joining us in this edition of the India Development Debate. I think the future and what it will unfold for Sri Lanka is going to be extremely crucial for India to watch. But I agree with what our guests are putting on the table. This isn't a China versus an India. This could well be an India that can engage better with Sri Lanka, and wishing away China each time may actually just be foolhardy. But thank you very much for being with us in this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather. Up next is Top 10 at 10.